He promised me forever. But forever ended the night the fire took everything, including the truth I was never meant to find. When my mother-in-law first offered to babysit, I thought it was a blessing. But the day I realized she was keeping my baby behind my back, something inside me shattered. It started with a sound, not a scream or a cry, but the soft clicking of my mother-in-law's front door closing quieter than usual. I was standing in the driveway, groceries in my arms, when I noticed her car missing from the garage. Inside the house, everything looked fine. My baby's blanket lay neatly folded on the couch. The bottles I had sterilized were gone from the counter, and the small, handmade stuffed bunny, my son's favorite, wasn't there. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe she'd taken him for a short walk, maybe to the park. She adored him. After all, she had said it herself 100 times. He's the light of my old age. But something about that silence in her house, that unsettling emptiness, stayed with me all day. Before all of this, life was simple in its beautiful, exhausting way. My husband, Ryan, and I had just had our first child, a boy named Ethan. I was 6 months into maternity leave and already dreading going back to work. The nights were long, the days longer, but motherhood filled me in a way nothing else ever had. Ryan's mother, Linda, was overjoyed about becoming a grandmother. She lived just 15 minutes away, and she made it her mission to be involved in every tiny milestone. When Ethan smiled for the first time, she was the first to see it, not even me. When he rolled over, she filmed it and sent it to everyone in the family group chat before I even knew it happened. I told myself it was sweet, that it came from love. I wanted to believe that. When my maternity leave ended, Linda offered to watch Ethan 3 days a week while I worked. She said it would help us save money, and that she wanted to bond with her grandson. Ryan thought it was a perfect idea. She raised 2 boys, he said one night, spooning mashed potatoes onto his plate. She knows what she's doing. I nodded, though my stomach twisted. Linda had always been the kind of woman who believed mothers should stay home and raise children, not go back to work. When I first told her about my career, my promotion in marketing, my goals, she smiled politely, then said, "You'll see what really matters when you have your own." Now that I had Ethan, I did see what mattered, but I also knew I couldn't give up my job. We needed both incomes, and, in some small way, I needed that part of myself that wasn't just mom. So I said yes, she could watch him. The first few weeks went smoothly. She'd text me pictures throughout the day. Ethan napping, Ethan eating, Ethan wrapped in one of her knitted blankets. She'd call to tell me about his naps, his burps, his giggles. But then, small things began to shift. It started with diapers every Friday. I dropped off a new pack, the big one with 96 pieces. By Monday, she'd ask for more. I brushed it off, thinking maybe she was being extra cautious, changing him more often than I would. Then there were the outfits. I'd pick him up wearing something I didn't recognize, clothes I hadn't packed. She said her neighbor had gifted them. Then, one afternoon, I came home early from work, a surprise visit. Linda's car wasn't in her driveway. I called her, heart racing. "Oh, sweetheart," she said breathlessly, "we're just out for a drive." He fell asleep in the car, so I thought I'd let him nap a bit. Something in her tone, that mix of guilt and defensiveness, made me pause. But I didn't question it. I didn't want to sound ungrateful. "Ryan thought I was overthinking, babe. You've been anxious ever since you went back to work," he said, rubbing my shoulders that evening. "She's just trying to help. Don't turn it into something it's not." Maybe he was right. Maybe I was just a new mom who couldn't let go. Still, I couldn't shake that uneasy feeling, the sense that something was happening beyond what I was being told. One evening, I was folding laundry when Ryan's phone buzzed on the coffee table. A message from Mom. I wouldn't have looked, but the preview line caught my eye. "She doesn't have to know. Okay, it's better this way." My hands froze over the pile of baby clothes. My heart thudded in my chest. I opened the message thread before I could stop myself. Dozens of texts scrolled up the screen, short, rushed messages between them. "Linda, I'll keep him tomorrow. No need to pick up early." Ryan. "Okay. Don't mention it to her. She's stressed enough." "Linda, I promise. You can tell her later." I felt my mouth go dry. "Tell me, what later?" I confronted Ryan the moment he walked in. He looked stunned, then defensive. "Babe, it's nothing like it sounds," he said, running a hand through his hair. "Mom just thinks you worry too much. She didn't want to stress you, that's all." But I wasn't convinced. That night, I lay awake staring at the baby monitor. The green light blinked softly, steady, like a heartbeat. and I couldn't shake the thought that maybe, just maybe, my son wasn't always where I thought he was. The next morning, I told Linda I'd be dropping Ethan off later than usual. She sounded cheerful on the phone. Double quotes. Oh, take your time, dear. We'll have our little adventure once you bring him over. Adventure, the word echoed in my head. After I dropped him off, I parked my car a few streets away. I sat there for half an hour, hands gripping the steering wheel, heart pounding so hard it hurt. Then I saw her. Linda came out of the house with Ethan in his carrier. She looked around quick, nervous, then placed him in her car and drove off. I followed. She didn't go to the park. She didn't go to the store. She drove 20 minutes out of town, to a quiet neighborhood I didn't recognize. She parked in front of a house with white shutters and a rose garden. A woman came out, older, maybe in her late 60s. They hugged. Linda handed her my baby. I remember gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. That's when I knew whatever was happening, it wasn't innocent. Anna's breath quickened as she stood frozen in the hallway, her phone trembling in her hand. The screen still glowed with the last message. I know what you did. Her heart pounded, not just from fear, but from the guilt she had buried deep inside. It wasn't just a random message. Someone knew. She moved silently toward the kitchen, where Daniel was sipping coffee, pretending to read the newspaper. His usual calm face looked different, tense, eyes darting toward the door, as if expecting someone. Anna tried to speak, but the words got caught in her throat. Did you get a message? She finally managed to whisper. Daniel looked up sharply. What message? His tone was defensive, too quick. That's when she realized he knew something too. There was an invisible wall between them now, built from lies, secrets, and years of pretending everything was fine. The phone buzzed again. This time, a photo appeared. It was a picture of their family taken last Christmas, but circled in red was someone standing in the background near the window. A shadowed figure, the same one Anna had seen that night when she thought she heard footsteps outside. Her hands shook. Daniel, who's sending these? He stood up slowly, his jaw tightening. It's him, he said quietly. He's back. Anna froze. Who's back? Daniel didn't answer. Instead, he walked toward the basement door, a place they hadn't entered in months. He unlocked it, the sound echoing down the quiet hallway. Dust and darkness met them as he turned on the light. Boxers, old photographs, and an old safe sat in the corner. I should have told you everything, he said, his voice low. Anna stepped closer, her heart pounding. Told me what? Daniel opened the safe and took out a stack of old letters tied with a red ribbon. They were stained and torn. He handed them to her. These are from Mark. She froze at the name. Mark, her ex-boyfriend who disappeared 12 years ago without a trace. Everyone thought he'd left the country after their breakup. But now, Anna tore one open with trembling hands. The handwriting was messy but familiar. The words sent a chill through her entire body. I'm coming back for what's mine. You both took everything from me. She looked at Daniel in shock. You said he left? Daniel's eyes darkened. He didn't. That night, things got out of control. I thought it was over. The realization hit Anna like a wave of cold water. Daniel had done something terrible, something to Mark. And now, whoever was sending those messages, it could only mean one thing. Mark might still be alive. A loud thud echoed upstairs. Both of them froze. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming from the hallway. Daniel grabbed a baseball bat from the corner, signaling Anna to stay quiet. They crept up the stairs together, every sound magnified in the silence. When they reached the living room, the front door was open, swinging slightly with the wind, but outside, on the porch, was something that made Anna's knees buckle. A small box, wrapped in black paper. Daniel stepped forward and opened it carefully. Inside lay an old photograph, the three of them, Anna, Daniel, and Mark smiling together, from years ago. But this time, across the photo, written in fresh red ink were the words, "See you soon." Anna screamed. Daniel dropped the box. The air felt heavier, suffocating. Somewhere in the distance, a shadow moved past the window, watching. The nightmare they thought was buried was about to begin again. The night passed in uneasy silence. Anna sat by the living room window, her eyes fixed on the dark garden outside, every flicker of light making her flinch. Daniel paced the floor, restless, checking the locks over and over again. The sound of the wind scraping against the shutters felt almost like whispering, soft, taunting, familiar. Neither of them had slept. Every creak of the house carried weight now, like ghosts of the past walking through their memories. The letters lay scattered on the table, their words dancing in the dim lamplight, reminders of a mistake they could never erase. At dawn, Daniel's phone rang. The number was unknown. He hesitated, then answered. A distorted voice came through the speaker, calm yet cold. You thought you could bury me, Daniel, but graves don't hold secrets forever. The call ended before Daniel could respond. His face turned pale. Anna stared at him, tears welling up in her eyes. It's him, isn't it? Daniel didn't reply. Instead, he walked out to the backyard, where the morning mist clung to the air like a veil. He looked toward the old oak tree, the one Mark used to sit under, where they all once laughed like nothing could break them apart. He whispered to himself, I should have told her everything back then. Anna followed him outside. Tell me now, she said softly. Daniel turned toward her, his voice trembling. The night he disappeared, we fought. He found out about us, about you and me. He wasn't just angry, Anna. He wanted to destroy us both. I tried to stop him, but he fell. I panicked. I thought he was dead. I buried him near the riverbank. I swear, I didn't mean to. Anna's scream cut through his words. You buried him. Her voice cracked in disbelief and horror. Daniel reached out to her, desperate. I did it for us, for our life, our family. But before he could finish, a shadow moved at the edge of the yard. A tall figure stood there, half hidden in the fog. Anna froze. Daniel slowly turned his head. His blood turned to ice. The man stepped forward. His face was scarred, aged, but unmistakable. It was Mark. Alive. Miss me, he said, a cruel smile twisting his lips. Anna stumbled backward, her mind spinning. Mark's voice, the same one she'd once loved, now sounded like vengeance itself. Daniel dropped the bat. Mark's eyes glowed with fury. You didn't check my pulse, brother. He spat the last word like poison. You left me there to die, but I crawled out. It took me years, Daniel, years to heal, to plan, to watch your perfect little life bloom from my pain. Anna's heart pounded so hard she could barely breathe. Mark, please, he turned to her sharply. Don't. You chose him. You lied to me. You helped cover it up. His gaze softened for a moment, almost human, then hardened again. Now, you'll both pay. In a flash, Mark pulled out his phone and pressed play. A video began to play on the screen. Security footage, showing Daniel years ago at the riverbank, digging a shallow grave. The camera zoomed in on his face. It was undeniable. Anna covered her mouth, tears streaming down. The truth, finally, unburied. Mark stepped closer. You see, I could have gone to the police, but that would be too easy. I want you to feel what I felt. The fear, the betrayal, the helplessness. Daniel's voice broke. Mark, please, we can fix this. Mark laughed bitterly. Fix this? You can't fix the dead. He pulled something from his jacket, a small remote with a red button. You remember that old safe in your basement? His grin widened. I put something inside. A gift. You've got 5 minutes before this house burns, just like my life did. Then he turned and disappeared into the fog, his laughter echoing through the morning air. Daniel and Anna rushed back inside, their panic rising. They tore open the safe, and there it was, a small ticking device wired to explosives. Anna screamed, Daniel, what do we do? He worked frantically, trying to disconnect the wires. Sweat poured down his face. The timer read 103, 059, 040. In the chaos, Anna's phone buzzed again. A new message from Mark. Sometimes, the only way to destroy a lie is with fire. The screen went dark. Daniel shouted, Go, Anna, run. She hesitated, tears streaming, refusing to leave him. But as the timer hit 005, Daniel pushed her toward the door. Go. Anna ran, her scream lost in the thunderous explosion that tore the house apart. The blast lit up the sky, and in the flames, the truth finally burned free. When I woke up, everything was orange, the glow of fire still licking at the night sky, the taste of smoke burning in my throat. My body ached from the blast. I could barely move. The paramedics' voices blurred together as they lifted me onto a stretcher. Somewhere between the chaos, I asked for Daniel. They didn't answer. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and loss. My arms were bandaged, my ears ringing. Every second stretched, cruel and silent. I remember staring at the clock above my bed, 3:47 a.m., and thinking, that's when everything ended. They told me Daniel didn't make it. I didn't cry at first. It was like my body forgot how. The world felt weightless, unreal, like I was floating in someone else's nightmare. Then, as dawn bled into the windows, it hit me. The sound that came out of me wasn't a scream, but a broken gasp that never seemed to end. They said the fire was deliberate, that the house was wired, that someone wanted us dead. I didn't have to say who, I just nodded. The days after were a blur. Police questions, reporters, the endless pity of strangers. I buried Daniel in the small churchyard behind his childhood home, the same place where he once promised me a lifetime of quiet happiness. As they lowered his coffin, I stood there with shaking hands, remembering his voice saying, "Run." That single word kept replaying in my head, not as a command, but as a curse. For weeks, I couldn't sleep. Every shadow looked like Mark. Every knock on the door made my heart race. I knew he was out there, watching, waiting for me to crumble. But something inside me changed after the funeral. The woman who'd trusted to Italy, who'd believed in family, in forgiveness, she was gone. I started digging, not for the truth, I already had that, but for his weakness. Mark was meticulous, paranoid even, but he'd made mistakes, small ones. The phone he used to send that final message wasn't as untraceable as he thought. A friend from my old office helped me get into the metadata. The calls, the messages, all pinged from one area, the edge of the old sawmill, 10 miles outside town. It took me 3 nights before I gathered the courage to go. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't want pity. I wanted closure. The mill looked like something forgotten by time. Rusted doors, broken windows, weeds creeping through the cracks. The air smelled of oil and rot. I stepped inside, flashlight trembling in my hand. My heart thudded so loud I thought he'd hear it. And then, a voice, smooth, mocking. "You shouldn't have come alone, Anna." He stepped out of the shadows. Same leather jacket, same cruel smile. His face was thinner now, eyes hollowed out. He looked more like a ghost than a man. "I wanted to see you," I said. My voice surprised me, calm, almost steady. "To ask why." He tilted his head. "Why? Because you and your husband buried me alive. Because you stole my life. Because I watched from the dark while you built your happy little world on my grave." I took a step forward. "You think this will fix it? Killing him, burning everything?" He laughed, a low, broken sound. "No, but it makes the pain even. You can't imagine what it's like to crawl out of dirt with broken ribs, wondering why your brother didn't even look back." For a moment, I almost pitied him. Almost. "You could have gone to the police," I said softly. "You could have told me you were alive." His smile faded. "And miss watching your perfect life fall apart." "No, Anna, this was better." Then I saw it, the small glint behind him, a camera. He'd been recording the whole thing. "You're going to use this," I said, realization hitting me. "You want me to confess. You want to drag me down to..." He didn't deny it. "You were part of it, Anna. You didn't tell anyone. You're as guilty as he was." I stepped closer, slow, deliberate. "Maybe I am," I whispered, "but you know the difference between you and me." He frowned. "What?" "I still have something left to lose." I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out my phone. I hit play. His voice, the recording from the night of the explosion, filled the air. "You've got 5 minutes before this house burns." His eyes widened. I sent it to the police an hour ago," I said quietly. "They're probably on their way." He lunged toward me, rage twisting his face. I stumbled backward, flashlight crashing to the ground. We struggled, the air filled with grunts and broken curses. He grabbed my arm, but I drove my knee into his stomach. He fell, gasping. Outside, I heard sirens. He looked up at me, eyes wild, desperate. "You think they'll believe you?" He spat. "You think this makes you innocent?" I knelt beside him, trembling. "No, but it makes me free." The police burst in moments later, shouting commands. Mark tried to run, but they tackled him, forcing him to the ground. I stood there, watching, my heart breaking all over again, not for him, but for the man he could have been. As they led him away, he looked back at me. For the first time, his face softened, almost regretful. Then, he was gone. The mill fell silent again. Dust hung in the air like ghosts. When I stepped outside, the morning light touched the trees, soft and golden. For the first time in months, I felt the weight begin to lift. Not gone, just lighter. I drove home, in silence. The road stretching ahead like a wound, slowly healing. The trial dragged on for months. Every morning I'd walk into that cold courtroom with my stomach twisted in knots, the sound of my own heels echoing too loudly on the tiled floor. Mark sat just a few feet away, hands cuffed, his expression unreadable. Sometimes he'd glance at me, not with hatred, not anymore, but with something darker, heavier, a quiet understanding that we'd both lost everything. The prosecutors painted him as a monster. A vengeful brother who tried to murder his own flesh and blood. The defense tried to twist it, claiming insanity, trauma, years of neglect. I just sat there, hands folded in my lap, waiting for it all to end. When it was my turn to testify, the room went still. I told them everything, about the night he came to our house, about the fire, about the fear that followed. But I also told them the truth that no one wanted to hear, that years ago, Daniel and I made a terrible mistake, that we buried a secret to protect ourselves, and in doing so, we destroyed him. There was a long silence after my statement. I could feel the weight of every gaze in that room. Pity, judgment, confusion. The judge thanked me for my honesty, but I could see in her eyes that this story had no winners. When the verdict finally came, Mark was sentenced to 15 years. He didn't look up when they read it. I think, in some way, he'd already made peace with it. After the sentencing, I walked outside into the winter air. The courthouse steps were covered in a thin layer of frost. Reporters waited with their cameras, shouting questions, but their voices felt far away. I kept walking until I reached the edge of the street, where Daniel's old pickup used to park. The world was so painfully ordinary that it almost felt cruel. The weeks after the trial were quiet, too quiet. The house had been rebuilt, but it didn't feel like home anymore. The walls echoed differently. Even the lights seemed colder. I'd catch myself setting 2 plates at the table, or folding laundry for someone who would never wear it again. I started going back to work, slowly. My co-workers didn't know what to say, so they said nothing. Some offered hugs, others avoided eye contact. I preferred the silence. At night, I'd sit by the window and write letters I never sent, to Daniel, to Mark, to myself. One night, I received a letter from the prison. My hands shook as I opened it. It was from Mark. The handwriting was messy, almost childlike. He wrote, "I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know, I don't hate you anymore." Maybe I never really did. I think I just needed someone to blame so I wouldn't have to blame myself. Tell Daniel I'm sorry. Tell him I hope he rests. I read it over and over until the words blurred. Then I cried, really cried, for the first time since the fire. After that, something inside me shifted. I started going to therapy. I began gardening again, just small things, rosemary, mint, marigolds. There was something grounding about the dirt, about nurturing life again after losing so much of it. In the spring, I visited Daniel's grave. The grass had grown back, soft and green. I sat down beside the stone, tracing his name with my fingertips. "I did what you told me," I whispered. "I ran, but I think I'm done running now." The wind rustled through the trees, warm and gentle. For the first time, I didn't feel alone. Over the next year, I rebuilt myself piece by piece. I volunteered at the community shelter, helped organize a support group for families affected by violence. I found meaning in the small things, the laughter of strangers, the smell of rain, the feeling of my heart beating and not breaking. Then one day, I received another letter, this one from Mark's counselor at the prison. She said he'd been helping other inmates learn to read, that he spoke of his brother often, and of a woman who still believed in doing the right thing, even when it hurt. I sat with that letter for a long time, not because it changed anything but because it reminded me that even broken people can choose to be better. Months later, I drove to the edge of town, to the old mill where it all ended. The building had been demolished. In its place, wildflowers had grown. I stood there for a while, watching the petals move in the wind. I thought about Daniel, about Mark, about how love and pain sometimes grow from the same soil. Maybe forgiveness isn't about erasing what happened. Maybe it's about learning to live with the echoes, to let them soften instead of haunt. As the sun set, I whispered a quiet goodbye and walked away. Sometimes, the people we love the most are the ones who hurt us in ways no stranger ever could. And sometimes, forgiveness isn't about freeing them, it's about freeing ourselves. When I think about Mark now, I don't see the man who destroyed my life. I see someone who was broken long before that night, someone we all failed to save. And maybe that's the hardest truth, that love doesn't always fix what's broken. Sometimes, it just teaches us how to live with the cracks. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that silence can be both a prison and a doorway. I spent years trapped in it, afraid to speak, afraid to remember. But the moment I started telling the truth, even to myself, the healing began. We can't rewrite the past, but we can choose how we carry it. So, if you've ever loved someone who betrayed you, if you've ever been forced to rebuild after the fire, remember this. You are not defined by what was taken from you. You are defined by what you do next. Would you have forgiven him? Tell me in the comments. And if my story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe for more true stories about love, loss, and the quiet strength it takes to begin again.